Good morning, guys. Hope you had a good weekend. This first lesson is going to be about graphing using a shortcut. So previously we would graph by doing an input-output table, and you would pick multiple values for X, you'd plug in, you'd get out a value for Y, and then you'd plot those points. We're going to start to transition into some deeper meaning for all of these and some quicker ways to graph things. So we're going to start here by sharing screen for our notes. Now, these notes are on your Teams page, so you can print them out if you want, or you can just go ahead and copy them as we work. This is going to be about quick graphs using X and Y intercepts. You're going to get 2 points, and those are the only 2 points you're going to need for these graphs, and these are going to be significant points. An X-intercept on the graph is where your line crosses the x-axis. Now remember, the x-axis is the one that goes across side to side. In order to find it algebraically, in order to solve and find it yourself, you will plug in 0 for y and then solve for x. So you plug in 0 for the opposite variable. And then in order to find a y-intercept, the y-intercept is where your graph will cross the y-axis. And to find that one, you will plug in 0 for x and solve for y. So again, we plug in for the other variable and then solve the equation. Now this requires us to use solving equation skills from much earlier in the year. So I'll give you a moment to pause and copy these down, and then we'll talk about what they mean and how we can work with them. Now that you've got your notes, let's go ahead and take a look at the first example of what it is that we're doing here. So we're going to have this equation here for finding our X and Y intercepts. This equation is in what we refer to as standard form, and we're going to spend a lot more time talking about this later on. We can't really graph this using our table of values because we don't have Y alone. Now I could get Y alone and then solve using our input-output table. And if you remember, that was the first step in finding your input-output table, was to get Y alone. But we now are going to look to find our X and Y intercepts. Now, if you remember from your notes, to find an X-intercept, you will plug in 0 for Y and then solve for X. So we're going to use this equation right here, 3x plus 4y equals 12. And we are going to replace the y with 0. Now 4 is touching y, so that's going to become 4 times 0. So this becomes 3x plus 4 times 0 equals 12. Well, we love plugging in 0 because anything times 0 is 0. So this is gone. And now I'm simply left with 3x equals 12. And if my goal is to get x alone, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of the year. If you have a 3 touching x, that means multiply, and the opposite of that is divide. So the x-intercept is 4. That means on the x-axis, we will have a point at 4. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right here on the x-axis. I've got a dot right there at 4. Now let's find the y-intercept. And again, from our notes for the y-intercept, it says plug in 0 for x. You're going to plug in 0 for the opposite letter. So we're going to use this equation again. But this time I'm going to plug in the 0 for the x. So this becomes 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 12. And again, anything times 0 is 0. So this is now gone. And I'm left with 4y equals 12. To get the y alone, I have to get rid of the 4 that's touching it. So I will divide. So y equals 3. That means the y-intercept is at 3. So on the y-axis, so the first one is on the x-axis, this one's going to be on the y-axis. I'm going to go ahead and plot my point right there. And now I'm going to get out my ruler, and I'm going to draw a straight line through those 2 points. And I graph my line. So instead of getting my full table of values, I'm going to just find the x and the y intercepts and then use those 2 points. And the best part about X and Y intercepts is we get to plug in 0. The reason we can plug in 0 is because if we look at where these 2 points are located, if they are located on an axis, one of the values is 0. If I look at this ordered pair right here, it's over 1, 2, 3, 4, up none, so that's 4, 0. It's the 4 from right here and the 0 that we plugged in. And if you look at this point here, we don't go anywhere except up 3. So that point right there, if I was to get the ordered pair, is 0, 3. And that's the 3 from the Y value and the 0 we plugged in. So that's why intercepts always use 0, because they're sitting right on the X or the Y axis. So let's take a look at another example here for finding our X and Y intercepts, and then we'll graph it on IXL so you can see how it works. So I've got this equation right here, 10x plus 9y equals 90. And we want to find the X-intercept and the Y-intercept. So remember, you're going to plug in 0 for the other letter and then solve. So take a moment, pause this here, and find your X and Y intercepts and see how you do. So let's go through it now and see how you did. For an X-intercept, remember you're going to plug in 0 for the letter Y. So this becomes 10x plus 9 times 0 equals 90. The 9 times 0 is gone, so that makes 10x equals 90. Divide out the 10, and x equals 9. We're going to do the Y-intercept, except now we're going to plug in the 0 for the x. So that becomes 10 times 0 plus 9y equals 90. The 10 times 0 is gone, so this becomes 9y equals 90. Divide to get the y alone, and I get y equals 10. So that means my X-intercept is at 9, and my Y-intercept is at 10. So let's stop sharing that. And let's go ahead and take a look at it at IXL, because this one is already prepared for us on an IXL problem. So here is that equation right there, 10x plus 9y equals 90. And we already found our intercepts. So we found the first one, the X-intercept, if you remember from your work, was at 9. So on the X-axis, I'm just going to put a dot at 9. And then if we look at our work, we look for the Y-intercept, and the Y-intercept was 10. So on the Y-axis, we put a point at 10. IXL graphs the line right through those 2 points for you, and you submit, and you're in great shape. You're going to notice that this continues to go through, and we can continue to solve for the X and the Y-intercepts. If we move up a level, same thing. And if we move up a level, the hardest ones are the exact same, except the numbers are just bigger. So you're just going to maybe get out your calculator on your Clever page and just use the calculator to do the calculations for you. And you'll see the grid just gets larger numbers here. All right. And if it counts by 20s every other square, that means this one's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So you just look at the scale when you do that. So that's a pretty brief lesson on your X and Y intercepts. Remember, you're just plugging in 0 to find the X and the Y intercept, and then you plot those points. You're going to be looking at IXL. Remember, you got to get to a SMART score of 80. Anything above that is extra credit. Guys, have a great day, and I will see you later.